It's no surprise when conservative writers like Michael Walsh say that Obamacare is collapsing, like he did last week, or when libertarian columnists like David Harsanyi say the law is dying and that we have no choice but to view it as a debacle. But what are you supposed to think after the New York Times? That's right, the New York Times reported on Sunday that Obamacare is ailing and that it may have to change just to survive. And then, this is the kicker, the very next day, none other than Bill Clinton called the Obamacare exchanges crazy, that's his word, and that they're killing small business people and individuals who make just a little too much money to qualify for subsidies. Bill Clinton said that, folks. I'm Steve Green, along with Scott Ott and Bill Whittle, and this is The Right Angle on Obamacare's worst week ever. And that's saying something. First, I want to go to the video of Bill Clinton speaking at a Hillary Clinton campaign stop in Michigan.
So you've got this crazy system where all of a sudden 25 million more people have health care, and then the people are out there busting it sometimes 60 hours a week, wind up with their premiums doubled and their coverage cut in half. It's the craziest thing in the world.
Scott, I don't even know where to begin with this, except maybe to ask you, where was this Bill Clinton 7 years ago, 6 years ago, when he and his wife were cheering on the passage of Obamacare?
Well, I've been wondering for a while what Hillary Clinton is going to do and when she's going to start doing it to separate herself from the Obama legacy adequately to, sort of shirk off or shed some of the negative things that happened. And this is the big negative. This is his signature legislation. This is the big dang deal of the entire Obama reign. And as we all predicted, it's going about the way that the laws of economics might have suggested it would. So I think that this I don't think that, despite the fact that Bill Clinton seems to shoot from the hip, I don't think any of this is an accident. I don't think that he suddenly, off the cuff decided to say something like that. I think it's part of an intentional plan to begin to put a little space between Hillary Clinton and what many people realize now was a horrible mistake. And that the fact that the New York Times is doing it, though, and I read this story, and if you read this thing, they're not saying, hey, Obamacare is failing, we never should have done this, or we should have listened to those Republicans. What they're saying is Obamacare is failing because it's not Obamacare enough. It has to be more Obamacare. And what they want is they want single payer. So what they're now calling for is saying, well, we really need to do the public option because there's no real competition in the states. Why is there no real competition in the states? Because insurance companies are bailing out. Why are insurance companies bailing out? Because math.
Well, in math, yeah, but politically, Scott, is that very smart to sell a single payer for the people who broke this thing to begin with to say, well, we just need a little bit more. You can trust us this time. How's that going to play?
It doesn't make any sense to me. But somehow, for decades now, the American people, or at least a bare majority of the American people, have been willing to accept the notion that if something the government is doing isn't working, it's because we haven't yet got enough government involved. It's because we haven't spent enough money on it. And that's been the refrain for Democrats for years and years. Why are the public schools failing in the inner cities? It's because we haven't spent enough on them. Why is it that we still have so many poor people? It's because we haven't handed out enough money. Why is it that Obamacare is failing? It's not because it violates the very, laws of nature and of nature's God. It's because we haven't spent enough money on it yet.
Yeah, Scott, when I was at Missouri Military Academy for high school, Sergeant Teal is an active duty Army sergeant who was doing a TDY through our school to help whip us into shape. He caught me doing some stupid thing. I don't even remember what it was when I had a bad case of senioritis. And he just looked down at me and said, son, don't be stupid on purpose. Don't we need to tell that to the American voters?
Yeah, that would be good. But here's the problem. Like it's all built. It's like a Lego castle, and one brick is clicked into the next one. And what we have is a situation where we are paying through the federal government and regulating through the federal government for the education that our children are getting that are making them obscurantists when it comes to economics.
Yeah, generation know nothing, I guess. All right, we got to move on. Here's what New York Times reporter Robert Pear wrote over the weekend. He said, Mr. Obama's signature domestic achievement will almost certainly have to change to survive. The two parties agree that for too many people, health plans in the individual insurance market are still too expensive and inaccessible. After years of the New York Times reporting, remain calm, all is well. This is kind of a stunning turnaround for the New York Times, isn't it, Bill?
Well, let's remember that the New York Times, when dealing with news that's not appropriate for the New York Times, has been a little slow on the uptake. You could have an honest-to-God nuclear war, go toe-to-toe nuclear warfare with the Ruskies, and have the entire city of New York nuked, and the next day the New York Times would report significant increase in temperature overnight. They're just
well, only if a
not
Democrat
suspected.
were president when it happened.
That's right. So, So anyway, the fact that the Times is covering it is a sign that it's got to be pretty bad. On the same note, I saw an article, saw a segment on ABC talking about the Clinton email scandal. So if ABC's talking about it, it's only because everybody else is talking about it, and they've covered it up as long as they can, and now they have to hop on the back of the news train instead of lead from the front, so that people don't come on to catch on to what a useless organization it really is. As far as the big argument though goes, Steve, this is his signature legislation. It's got his name on it. It didn't have his name on it, let us remember, until after it passed. It was passed by Nancy Pelosi mostly and Harry Reid, and shoved through the Congress in the middle of the night on a southbound horse with a scroll of parchment behind it, running from the law. But he took credit for it after it passed, and it is the only thing he's accomplished as president of any note. He has ruined the Middle East diplomatically. He's ruined the economy diplomatically. He hasn't done any great acts. He hasn't stood up to communism. He hasn't done anything. He passed Obamacare. And for those of us who've been fighting Obamacare for 8 years or whatever it's been now,
Yeah.
it's a little anticlimactic, but in some way a lot more spiritually appropriate to realize that this monstrosity is likely going to end not with a bang but with a fizzle, just like the rest of his presidency. Scotty said yesterday that he thought this might be the big call for single payer. I agree it's going to be the big call for single payer, Steve, but we have experimented with Obamacare for 5-6 years now, and all we've experienced is that our premiums have doubled or tripled, our deductibles have doubled or tripled, our health care is narrower, we didn't get to keep our doctor, and we didn't get to keep our health plan. So I don't think people are going to be in a real aggressive mood to stand up to this again.
Yeah, so I think what Bernie Sanders was calling it during the Democratic primaries was Medicaid for all or Medicaid for everybody. Yeah. And, people generally have a good experience with Medicaid in the fact that they're not on it. Do you think they can sell it that way?
Well, people have a good experience generally with Medicaid because in many cases, if not most cases, Medicaid patients are going to private doctors and they're being treated by private doctors. Medicaid pays for the treatment, but they're not going to a state health clinic where the doctor is appointed by the Federal Bureau of Doctors in Medicine. Ooh. And unfortunately, that's where we're headed. You cannot run let me rephrase this. The only kind of business that you can run at a net loss financially is a government subsidized business, because the government never runs out of money. If they run out of money, they just print more. So while everything that we were saying this whole time, that this doesn't make economic sense, has doomed Obamacare, it would not doom single payer, because single payer never runs out of money. It's like them backing college loans. However, when people start getting the experience of going to state clinics the way they do, or state hospitals in Britain, and patients are left out in the hallway for 2 or 3 days and they're drinking water out of flower vases because they've been so neglected, we'll see how well we tolerate it then.
Yeah, I never thought I'd say this after the Fed, printed up $3 or $4 trillion out of nowhere, but we're going to need a bigger printing press. All right, folks, I saved the best for last. Guess who else says Obamacare has real problems? Well, it's the man who signed his name to the damn law, President Barack Obama. He told New York Magazine in a puffball interview that Obamacare needs, this is a quote, strengthening the marketplace, improving the subsidies so more folks can get it, making sure everybody has Medicaid who was qualified under the original legislation, doing more, this is rich, doing more on the cost containment. In other words, Obama himself said that his signature law has failed on every single promise. And get this, he blames Republicans in Congress for failing to fix the law that not one of them voted for, and which every single one of them predicted would fail just like Obama himself admitted. The balls on this lying sack of protoplasm. I can't believe it. January 20 can't get here soon enough, folks. And that is the right angle at Obamacare's worst week ever. But I hate to tell you, the worst is yet to come. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the paying members of BillWhittle.com for making this possible. We'll see you next time.